Hi, I'm Christy Nelson with the Summit Historical Society, and we thought it'd be fun to go back and look at some of the books that are no longer in print that tell the stories of our past. So today I'm going to be reading from a book that was written by Edna Strand Dercum called It's Easy, Edna, It's Downhill All the Way. It's a book that was copyrighted and printed in 1981 and is no longer in print, but has some great stories of our early days in Summit County. It starts with chapter one being the summer of 42 and starts with a quote from John Jerome that was in a skiing magazine back in 1969. You wind your way down the trucker's nightmare, which is Loveland Pass, headed west. Just as the nightmare aspect stops, and you are becoming reasonably confident that the highway is not, after all, going to do you in, you see a small sign on the left. Ski Tip Ranch, 1 mile. There's a dirt road leading back toward the mountains. Take it. Go find out what the world of skiing was like before it became programmed entertainment. Edna says, 27 years earlier, my husband and I and our 3-month-old baby, Rolf, were winding our way down that trucker's nightmare. It was the middle of June 1942, and it had snowed 8 inches the night before. As I looked over the edge of the winding road to the valley 3,000 feet below, I said to myself, no one will ever catch me driving this pass. Heading west, we had left the rolling green hills of Pennsylvania, where Max had been a professor of forestry at Penn State. Our future home was to be Colorado, where sometime, somehow, and some way we would build a ski lodge, go skiing every day, and live an uninvolved, quiet life in the mountains. Little did we dream what lay ahead of us. Our covered wagon was our 1940 Ford convertible. Passing through Oberlin, Ohio, I wondered what Colorado would be like. We had spent most of our lives in suburbia, Max in Cleveland and I in Minneapolis. As we left the east with stately elms and everything in summer bloom, I felt sure that Dillon, Colorado would be just as lovely at this time of year. After the rolling hills of Ohio, Illinois, and Missouri, we were soon speeding along the main gravel highway of Kansas, reaching straight to the horizon and infinity. On the car radio, the Denver station was announcing from the foot of the towering Rockies. I pictured a backdrop of steeply rising jagged peaks with glaciers and waterfalls plunging to the edge of Denver. Clouds were building up around us as we passed through Oberlin, Kansas. I remarked to Max that I'd never seen such beautiful thunderheads. The wind was terrific. I expected the canvas roof of our little car would rip off at any moment, but we kept sailing on. About 2 hours later, the western music was interrupted by a news flash. A tornado has just passed through Oberlin, Kansas, leaving much destruction. I drew a deep breath and looked back at the enormous thunderheads we were leaving behind us. Whew. Luckily, we reached Denver at night and continued up to Idaho Springs, so I missed the expected glaciers and waterfalls. We found a room in a boarding house and decided to go on to Dillon the next morning. Max's new job with the U.S. Forest Service did not start until Monday, and this was Saturday. We'd have enough time for him to show me our ranch, which he had bought the summer before. We had been afraid that America's imminent involvement in the war in Europe would prevent our getting west very soon again to look for land. Max's job would place him at the top of Mount Evans, and the Forest Service took a dim view of a new baby living at the elevation over 14,000 feet. Therefore, I was to stay in Idaho Springs until our furniture arrived. We planned that I would then look around for a house to rent near Dillon and perhaps begin to fix up our ranch house. As we neared Dillon, Max told me there were 4 bars and 2 liquor stores on the 1.5 blocks of Dillon's main street. But the bars served breakfast. A swirling eddy of dust stirred by a cold breeze preceded us as we entered the unpaved main street. Buildings with rough wooden boardwalks in front of them lined each side of the street. Each building had a false front, something I'd not seen before except in Western movies. I looked up and down the street. There were the Blue River Inn, the Dillon Inn, the post office, the grocery store, the Mint Saloon, a teeny drugstore, 2 liquor stores, and a filling station. Across the street was a 1-room wide house with a false front so high and wide that it overpowered the little faded yellow house, which appeared to be tipping forward into the street. Tacked on to the back of this house was one little caboose-like room after another, like a train pulling the whole building the other direction into the sagebrush field behind the house. On the false front was printed in big letters, Cafe, but it was empty and closed. Next to the yellow house and separated by dirt, sand, and rocks was a series of small, unpeeled log cabins. There was no grass anywhere. A sign in front of the cabins read, Heart of the Rockies Cabin Camp. A big white heart was painted in the middle of the sign. For Sunday breakfast, we decided to try the nearest bar, the Dillon Inn. It was dim and cool inside with a jukebox playing cowboy songs. The jangling of several slot machines lined up near the front of the long room competed with the jukebox. The men ignored us as we climbed up on the stools before the bar. We would have preferred one of the booths in the back, but they were both occupied. No one else was eating breakfast. There was just one menu for 6 bits, or 75 cents. Steak, eggs, and hash browns. I had never heard of hash browns, but felt too timid to inquire. While waiting to be served, we observed the other patrons. They were all having drinks. The bartender set the bottle in front of the customer, who poured his own. I heard the bartender say to one fella down the bar, who looked like a miner, "You planning on taking a bath?" I was puzzled, but later learned that when a customer poured himself too generous a drink, that was the usual sarcastic remark. On all sides of the barroom walls, I saw excellent Western paintings. I asked the bartender who had done them. "Oh, some guy by the name of Delano," he told me. "Don't know why there are so many. Expected maybe he bought his grub and booze with him." Years later, after Gerard Delano became famous, we saw one of his smaller paintings priced at $15,000. Steak, eggs, and fried potatoes were served on a thick white crackled plate with a big mug of coffee. We had almost finished when the slot machine and jukebox din was joined by loud swearing toward the back near the booze. Soon we heard blows and more cussing. We started to look around, but the bartender leaned over to us and said, "Don't look around, just sit tight." Sitting tight on a high, wobbly stool isn't easy while holding a squirming baby on your lap and eating with great curiosity about the barroom drama behind you. Soon the battle behind us came closer. Bam! Bam! Then we felt a rush of cool air. They'd gone right out the front door and onto the street. We jumped down and looked around. There they were, two big guys slugging it out in the middle of the dirt road that was US Highway 6. In seconds, it was a crowd pleaser. Two official looking men came through the crowd, pushing people back and holding up their hands to stop the trucks and cars before they crashed into the crowd. The bartender, leaning over our shoulders, explained, "One's the sheriff and t'other's the marshal." Now I thought they'll put a stop to this fight in a hurry. No such thing. They pushed the crowd back enough to give the sluggers room. "It's a fair fight, folks. It's a fair fight. So let 'em finish it. Just stand back, folks." The truck drivers were craning their necks out of their cabs, and people in cars behind them were honking their horns. I thought, this is Dylan? How it ended, I don't know. With Rolf on my hip, I returned to my breakfast at the bar. We'll pick up our story next when Rolf and Edna and Max go out to see their ranch for the first time.